Welcome back. We've gotten this part all done. We've created the JWT token and we're sending it out front to the client. Now the client is going to be able to send back the JWT token and get the profile. Now there's one other step that we need to have here, because we're going to try and incorporate session management as well with Redis. And instead of just now using the .verify with the JWT token, we're going to actually store the JWT token in our Redis database. And by storing it in our database, we have full control to see what tokens are available, what tokens we've given out, and also revoke them anytime that we want. All we need to do is just delete them from the database. And now, even if a user tries to get the profile with that token, because we've removed it, it no longer is able to access that information. And this gives us a lot of power and maneuverability when, let's say, a user hits sign out. When a user hits sign out, for example, we can remove that token from our database. So in this video, we're going to actually add Redis to our backend and store this JWT token into our Redis database, so that when a user checks and asks for the profile, we check our Redis database for that token, and if all checks out, we send them the package. Let's get started. In order to have Redis working and being able to use on our server, we need to actually install the Redis client. And in our case, we need the Redis client from npm. And we see that it's a nice npm install, and it gives us nice little example of what we can do. Let's install Redis for now. And by the way, we're not going to add Redis to our Docker container yet. We're going to do that in one of the upcoming exercises. But for now, because we're still developing it, make sure everything works, we're going to have it completely separate from our Docker container. Now, I'm going to bring back the container so everything is running. And we have the Redis package installed. Now, in our sign-in, let's go to our page. And at the very top, add our new Redis package. We simply require it from the Redis package we just installed. And now we see that in order to have access to it, we simply do client equals redis dot create client. And once we create the client, we can just do our commands that we've seen before with Redis. I can set, I can hset, I can check the h keys, and do all these commands. Again, there's a lot of really nice documentation here. For our purposes though, let's just create this client right now. I'm going to say setup Redis and create this client. And just to be descriptive here, I like actually naming it Redis client. Now, this Redis client, as parameter, actually receives as default localhost. But I like being explicit. And when we actually transition to Docker or another server, we're going to have to say where the host is. For now, I'm just going to say localhost or our good old friend 127.0.1. Now, if I save this, I'll get an error saying that Redis connection failed. Well, because we're not running Redis. Remember, in order for us to connect to something, we have to start the Redis server. And luckily for us, in the Redis section, we've already installed it, right? If we go back to our desktop, we see that, yeah, we have our Redis package here. And we can just start it. I'll just say that I'm going to add a new window. And let's make this a little bit bigger. In here, I'm just going to go into my Redis folder and run the Redis server command. All right, it's ready to accept connections. Let's go back and refresh. And we see that we still are getting this error. Now, why is this? Let's think about this. Based on what we've learned about Docker and all these connections, what are we missing here? Well, if you remember, our backend is running in a Docker container. This Docker container has a whole different idea of what localhost is. It's completely different than what we have on our machine, that is, our computer, localhost. If we go to our Docker Compose file, we see that we do port forwarding in order for us to actually access localhost 3000. But for Redis, we don't actually have any of that set up yet. So before we go ahead, and even though we have our local server running, we actually want it to be run on Docker. Otherwise, we have to change our entire setup. And I think this is a good step to make sure that we have a nice running Redis server within our Docker file so that we don't have to worry about who is connected to what is connected to where. All we need to do is to make sure that we do some port forwarding so we can access it. So, before we get into the next video, I want to challenge you. Based on what we've learned about Docker up until now, can you quickly set up a new Redis service right down here and have it connected to the backend API so that you're not getting this error? I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.